Should I sit?
Oh, whatever you like.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Steve Kim from the Bass Basement, and I've known this guy. We're going to borrow a phrase from Jeff Simmons. I've known this guy since the Dead Sea was just sick. Chuck Deardorf.
That's probably true.
How are you, Chuck?
I'm good. I'm good.
So,
Very.
I don't have enough time here to talk about everything you've done, right? So, we just know you've done. As a matter of fact, it'd be easier just to say what you have not done. So, what have you not done?
I never got to play with Miles Davis, but he'd probably scare the hell out of me. So.
Okay, didn't play with Miles, but everything else in between.
I guess so. I guess so.
So I gotta say, when I met you, when was Jorgen Cruz and the Victory Music Hall?
Yeah, that was.
What year was that?
Wow, dating myself here, but that was 75, 76.
Okay, so there you go. So now you were playing a Fender, and I believe you might have just moved to Lakewood or something.
Yeah, I was living in Olympia previous to that, where I was teaching in a music store, and I had gone to college down there at Evergreen.
Okay, now I remember also, I believe I played in your hometown of Dayton.
Yeah, that's where I'm from originally.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
And I believe I remember a brass instrument in your past.
Yes.
So pre-bass, what are we talking about?
Pre-bass, I started in school band. In the area I was in Ohio, they had really strong instrumental band programs. I was a trombone player starting in 5th grade.
All right.
Not the sexiest instrument, but I grew to like it. I played it from 5th grade till right after I got out of college.
Okay, so what made the switch to bass from bone?
I started trombone. I was, I think, probably 11, something like that.
And were you playing in band, in school bands?
In school band, and then solo ensemble contests. And I was a good classical player. That's what I played, classical music and marching band. And you know, I could do that. Later on, I tried to play jazz on it, and I just couldn't hang. I was the lead player, probably, by the vernacular. But meanwhile, come 14, 15, me and my buddies are looking at guitars at music stores and going, well, wouldn't it be cool to play guitar and have a band, rock and roll band?
And one thing I know about Dayton is that there was a big music scene around there.
There was kind of a big music scene. There was a funk scene that I didn't know about at the time.
Yeah, there was that big funk scene.
Ohio players and all that. So they had a kind of healthy scene there where you could play battles of the bands, right? So I was in a band with a bunch of people that were older than me, and that was great. So I started playing. My first professional gig was on trombone at 15, and
wow.
It was like an 11-piece dance band that kind of came out of the high school band. And then I started playing pool parties and battles of bands on bass, and you know, like a lot of people, probably yourself, I was listening to Jimi Hendrix and Cream and all the
sure.
Power trios, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and so that's what I was playing on bass. I didn't really have any lessons to begin with, so I just kind of self-taught.
And by the time you got out here, then, how old were you then?
I was 17 when I moved out here. So my folks moved from there because they owned some property up in Kitsap County.
Oh,
so I came along. I finished high school in Silverdale at Central Kitsap there, and I was put into the jazz band, which I didn't know anything about jazz at that time, but the band director, whose name was Maury Peterson, who really helped me out a lot and kind of showed me how it works, and we played a lot of Stan Kenton and stuff like that, and I grew to really like it. Ironically, Maury's daughter, Jenny Ivester, was married to the drummer I play with a lot now, flash forward, 50 years.
So I got to ask you, how did you meet Jorgen Cruz?
Okay,
who was a keyboard player in Tacoma in the 70s.
Right. I had gone to college at Evergreen, and when I got out, started playing around that area, and also in Tacoma, and hooked up with Jorgen because he had mostly been playing key bass when he played. He was a great electric keyboard player and piano player and composer. And so I started sitting in with those guys, him and a great drummer named Dean Shaprely, so I'm sure you'll remember.
And did you made those Court C things?
Yeah, it was post Court C, so it was a place called the Victory Music Hall.
Yeah, that's where I first caught
on
you.
6th Avenue, which became Jazz Bones later.
Right, became Jazz Bones.
And also the other side of the tracks up in
Right.
Auburn,
In Auburn.
which was another Chris Lund.
Right. Now you made a fretless bass.
I did.
So, and I played that bass for a while.
Mhm.
So, tell me about that thing.
I still have the neck of it. It's
Yeah.
actually in that bag I just brought in. It was, I had bought a couple of jazz basses when I was just starting out in a lounge band, and when I got out of college, and I went out and bought a couple of jazz basses, and at the time they weren't that valuable.
Right.
So-
right. You could get one for $300 or something.
I had heard Gary Burton's band come through Olympia with a 20-year-old Pat Metheny and Steve Swallow, and then Eberhard Weber,
Mm-hmm.
who was playing this upright stick bass. And I fell in love with that sound. I thought, God, how can I get that? So maybe I'll turn my bass into a fretless, and I'll sound like that a little bit. So with the help of a guy at the wood shop at Evergreen, we took the fingerboard off, got a piece of ebony, and put it on. And right when I got it finished, I heard Jaco Pastorius' first record, and I went, oh, somebody else had this idea too.
So now the body, I remember, was walnut.
Yeah, so.
So you fashioned that?
Yeah, we kind of copied the jazz. But you know, I learned a lot by doing it. The guy who ran the shop actually did a lot of the work too. So.
Now, I would see it in various places around town, you know, playing with Denny and Dave Peterson and the like, you know, and how did the double bass start fitting in? Because all of a sudden you jumped in with both feet with that, and you were just kind of the resident bass player for hire at Jazz Alley for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
how did that all come about?
Good fortune, timing, good fortune, and you know, having the ability to cover that stuff. So I started playing. I bought an upright bass in the late '70s because I was kind of discovering that, as you well know, a lot of people won't hire you on electric bass to play jazz.
jazz.
Yeah, it's just a thing. So instead of trying to fight that, I decided I'd make. You know, I was curious about it anyway, and I've been listening to Stanley Clark and Dave Holland and people like that, and Ray Brown, of course. Going, yeah, let's give it a try. So I bought a plywood bass, and I played that for a while, and started to get better. You know, I could hang. And then as I moved to Seattle, I kind of moved up to Seattle in the late '70s to work with Jim Knapp's Composers and Improvisers Orchestra. I was playing with Danny Goodhue and Dave Peterson and Barney McClure was
that's
the
right,
pianist,
Barney.
right. So I was kind of doing both. I started playing at this club called Parnell's, which is in Pioneer Square, and was lucky enough to back up several really great people down there. Chet Baker and Zoot Sims, people like that, would hire you for a whole week, just 5 nights with those guys. It was that was my real education, you know.
Yeah,
just go in there and they'd say, you know, let's do, you know, East of the Sun. I said, well, I'm not sure I know that. It's in E flat, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So by the time you got these duo things at Jazz Alley, right?
Yeah.
You had been on the instrument for a time already then.
Yeah, maybe 3 years or something like that.
But then that must have greatly accelerated stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Every one of those gigs was probably just another course, you know.
Yeah, that was when Jazz Alley was in the University District.
That's right.
And John had started out and decided that in order to kind of survive in that particular time, he wouldn't bring whole bands in because it was a risky financial issue at that time. Because jazz hadn't really made a huge comeback yet.
So they get a solo artist.
Bring a solo artist in, put a rhythm section, and in the beginning it was just duos.
That's right.
So, and no cover charge, and just 5 nights of playing with
Now,
Kenny
don't-
Barron and Monty Alexander.
And there
people
was an
like
Eastern
that.
European fella I remember that you were with, Adam.
Adam Makovich. Yeah.
So now, how did that work? Did he just say, "This is what I'm doing," or did he just start counting tunes off, or how did that?
Well, we had lunch. We had lunch at a Chinese place up there in the
Yeah.
Ave, and he just said, "I have some tunes to play," and he says, "Oh, by the way, don't walk ever."
Oh,
So I went, "Okay," and then I got on. We got back and played, and it was just
yeah,
playing
he
like
was.
a maniac.
He was a very dense.
He was a very Art Tatum influenced piano.
And what did
player.
he want you to do if he didn't want you to walk?
That's what I was asking myself. But we kind of worked it out. I kind of would play counter lines with him, and sometimes I'd sneak in a little walking line here and there. But
Around the same time, Cornish College of the Arts figures in there. So
Mhm.
how is that?
well, that
happening
all goes back to Jim Knapp.
I see.
Was just such a great influence on me musically and also educationally too. I came up, and Denny Goodhue helped me kind of get into his composers and improvisers
Mhm.
orchestra, and they had an opening for a bass player. So, and I thought at the time, I could read pretty well. I played bass clef and trombone and carry that over to bass. But man, when I got in with that, I realized I needed to learn a lot more about reading because those were very hard charts.
Yeah, sure.
But it was great for me. It was a great challenge. So I started doing that. We rehearsed a lot at Cornish, and Gary Peacock was still there at the time.
Oh, right.
And Gary finally, at one point, decided he didn't want to teach the electric bass players anymore.
Uh-huh.
So Jim just said, "Would you like to do it?" And I said, "Yeah." And that's where I started with that,
Giving lessons.
giving lessons to
And
just
then-
electric bass players.
And now, eventually you end up as the administrator of the jazz studies area.
Yeah, it was mission creep. So I started out teaching just bass players, and then Gary left and
Mhm.
started teaching more bass players. Gradually started teaching a few ensembles as well, and then in the mid '80s, Jane Peck was the department chair there at the time, and there was an opening for the jazz program administrator, as Jim had decided not to do that
Mhm.
anymore. And she asked me if I wanted to try it. I was like, I've never done that before, but so I did, and I did it for 30 years.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
in one form or another, plus teaching too. So,
yeah.
so it was a good experience, And
So here we are now, and
mhm.
what's we find ourselves sort of opening up a little bit from the pandemic. What's going on these days?
Well, I'm kind of wrapping up my Cornish experience. There's a lot of stories to tell, but I'm not going to go into it here. But basically, they started changing the program, and kind of what I was teaching wasn't as relevant to the newer direction that they were going into. And it seemed like time to kind of start moving down. I'm still teaching some private lessons there. I did just get a Professor Emeritus Award about a month ago. Yeah, it's an honor. It's an honor. And it comes from...
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. It comes from the faculty.
Ah,
So it's
well,
a
that's
faculty senate.
high praise
does
indeed.
this.
then.
Yeah, 'cause those are the people who were my colleagues there that I...
And now you're still actively teaching down the road from here.
Yeah, I picked up as Cornish was kind of fading out. I started working at the Jazz Night School, and starting last fall actually, and that's a lot of fun.
So if somebody wants to get into your ensemble, can they request that?
They can do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I just finished my third quarter there. We're doing a performance tonight at the Royal Room.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting teaching adults. You know, I've done a little bit of that. I've taught at the Jazz Port Townsend for
Sure.
many years.
Sure.
And had that experience, but it's really great. They really want to play. They want to learn. They actually do what you ask them to do.
All right. All right.
And you know, sometimes that's a novelty. So I'm enjoying. I still love teaching. I just doing the full-time thing is you know, I've kind of did.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's not too much. It's good, right?
Yeah. So it gives me more time to do this.
Well, speaking of, you don't have your own, but you've agreed to play on the house bass.
I have.
So let's play a little
The
bit.
house bass. Okay.
I'm Steve Kim for Chuck Deardorf. Pleased to be with Chuck today in the bass basement. So from the bass basement, I'll see you next time. Okay, good, Chuck.
Hey, Steve.
All right, nice work, man. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.